steering wheel. Somebody tell him to give it to me.
There's something loose between my legs.
I don't know. Let go!
I'm heavier than a freaking boat.
Nothing he's could say could make that any better.
Yeah, nobody. No more radio for the rest of the race.
I'm going home.
Hello and welcome to DRSSC, an F1 podcast by soccer nerds. I am a soccer nerd, but not the one you're normally used to hearing starting this podcast. I am Donald. I got two of my fellow soccer nerds with me. First off, Ebony, how are you doing?
I'm great. A nice, easy Sunday. So I'm ready to talk some F1 movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also have Deepti with us. Deepti, hello.
Hi, Donald. I'm doing great. Also, great weekend. The sun's been out, and it's a bank holiday weekend here, so we have a long weekend.
Ooh, you get the holiday bump. That's always appreciated. Our man Andre is actually behind the ones and twos. He's making sure we sound good, but he will not be on this show because, as Ebony mentioned, we are discussing the F1 movie. We're finally getting around to the review of the movie that came out in late June. There will be spoilers, so if you have not seen it by now, first of all, go see it, and then you can come back and listen to this episode. Or if you're not going to see it, you're going to learn about how this movie was anyway. But first, I want to talk about the overall production, pre-planning, just the rollout of this movie. We have been hearing about this movie for what seems like 3 years. And leading up to it last year, as this podcast took off, we were kind of getting glimpses of this movie as it was being recorded, right? We're getting the bits and pieces of the post-game or the post-race podium stands. You see some of the stars of the movie kind of filming in between some of these races, in between some of these qualifying sessions. And finally, we were able to see it. So I want to get from the two of you, first of all, just general thoughts about the movie. We're going to get to more specifics, of course, but Ebony, I'll start with you.
It was a very classic Jerry Bruckheimer film. So if you've ever seen any of his other movies, guy gets the girl, they win the race, blah, blah, blah. It was a quintessential Jerry Bruckheimer film, which if you're a fan of his, it's the perfect movie for you. It was a good film. I really enjoyed it. I went and saw it twice. Once at IMAX and once at the Alamo, so just regular film. And I enjoyed it both times. I will say there's a difference between IMAX and because it was filmed for IMAX, which is another thing we're definitely going to start seeing in movies soon, which we should definitely talk about a little bit later. But it was good. It was fast. It kept you entertained and enticed, and it kept you actually wanting to watch the movie. There's some movies where you feel like you get the whole movie in the preview. This one wasn't that. And you there was a storyline that really, really captured you, especially on Sunnyside. So I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the cinematography as well, because that's one of the highlights for me of the movie. I saw it in IMAX only, so we'll be curious to hear your take on the differences between IMAX and, we'll call it, standard def movie. But first, Deepti, your general thoughts on the movie.
Yeah, I didn't see it in IMAX. I just saw it on normal screen, but I also agree. I thought the cinematography was amazing. I thought the soundtrack was amazing. It's another Hans Zimmer masterpiece. And, the director, Joseph Kosinski, he also did Top Gun Maverick, which I loved. And you got a lot of, that feel in this movie too, I think. I did not necessarily like the plot. And I also had some hesitations about seeing it initially, just knowing Brad Pitt was the lead and knowing that he's 60 or at least pushing 60. I don't know. I was okay, how are they going to make him an F1 driver, and how are they going to make him a convincing one? This is me not knowing any part of the story, but now I guess I thought that they were going to try to make him play a younger person, and I was just that's just not going to work because he doesn't look that young. But and now knowing that, he was meant to play a late 50s driver, he was meant to play someone who is quite too old to be a driver kind of thing, then it kind of worked a little bit better. But otherwise, yeah, I agree with Ebony. It moved fast enough that even though it was a fairly long movie, I think it was 2.5 hours or something, you didn't really feel like it was slow at any point, and there was no lagging. It just kept you entertained throughout the whole thing. So overall, like, definitely I would recommend to go see it, but don't go for like the plot unless the plot you like is cool race sequences.
So I want to touch on that because, well, first of all, I think it's great. I saw it in IMAX only. Deepti, you saw it in standard def only, and Ebony, you can bridge the gap because you've seen both. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But I'll start with this. When I go to a movie, and this is just me, I'm sure a lot of people may think differently, I ask one question: will it entertain me? That is why I'm spending my money, which is now, at least in DC, it's like $30 on tickets. I spend this money saying, is this going to entertain me? Is this going to be something that I'm going to enjoy? Or I'm going to at least leave the theater going, yeah, that was a good use of my $30. This was a good use of my $30. Of course, seeing it in IMAX probably didn't help with the price tag, but it definitely helped with the intensity of the movie for me. I thought the racing scenes were incredible. Had you in the edge of your seat. Deepti, like you said, 2.5 hours felt like it flew by, but there was definitely moments where I was leaning in my chair forward because I had the anticipation of what might come and the anxiety of what it could be, especially on the racing scenes with some of the events that happen. But I want to say this. I think details were a part of this. And I think learning from being on the grid for a year helped this movie. I also agree that Joseph Kosinski doing Top Gun Maverick helped this movie because he had to learn about how those details matter in the world of the Air Force. He had to do the same thing here in F1. The fact that they focus on a tire gunner for a portion of this movie is a thing that is for the F1 heads like us. It's not for the casual fans, but it also gives them a glimpse into what being a part of an F1 team can be like. Not in its entirety, but maybe in the sense that, yes, these details matter. The gunner messing up on changing a tire cost them a fraction of a second, which is the difference between first and 15th. That is something that is a real thing in our sport that I thought they at least did a good job of bringing some of those elements out. So I definitely appreciated that. Let's start. I feel like let's start with the cinematography because I think that's something that we all agree that we enjoyed. Deepti, I'll go back to you. What part of it did you enjoy the most? Was it the intensity of it? Was it maybe the tightness of some of the angles of the cameras? Or, as we know, that they used some old race footage and kind of turned that into the footage that we see in the movie?
Yeah. A little bit of everything, but I think what mostly kind of stood out was the camera angles and just, more specifically having the POV of like the driver or having the cameras in and around the car that we get little glimpses of during actual race weekends when they show us different camera footage from different drivers' cars. And that part is really cool. I think that really kind of pulls you into it and immerses you right into the scene. And so, just like a bird's eye view or like a little bit of a wider lens on a racetrack is cool, just seeing like the cars go around, but being as if you're in the driver's seat and having that point of view is super cool to me. And I think they did really well with, the camera angles and the intensity and like the speed at which like they moved the plot with the actual races. Like there was a lot more, I think, actual race footage that I was initially expecting in this. Because a lot of other, I haven't seen too many racing movies actually, but like other sports movies, like it's like how much of the actual sport do you get in the movie and how much of it is side plot? Like this was most of it was like racing. And so that part was cool. I also loved that like you said, they were on the actual grid for much of the year. And so you got to see like the actual tracks and the actual venues, and you got to see characters from actual Formula One pop in and like have some cameos and whatever. So as a Formula One fan, that part was also really fun to see.
I would definitely talk about the cameos because some were funny, some were hilarious, Gunther. And then there was also some that, as you mentioned, you kind of know, if you know the backstory, it kind of feels, kind of pretty well placed, but you could tell that some of these guys had to actually act like Charles Leclerc on the final scene of the final podium when we know what had happened to him in real life. Ebony, go to you. Talk about the cinematography, what you liked, disliked about it.
So, I mean, overall, it was just a very good film. Apple did a really, really good job with, like, you know, like you're saying, like the camera angles and just like making us feel like we were there. It was really, really good. I really enjoyed the aspect of just like, especially in IMAX, where, you know, some of the scenes kind of like blow up and you get a bigger picture of what's happening on the track around them. So like if you were to see it in IMAX, there were some scenes that were just like, you know, it looked widescreen and then they would turn to go into like a turn for the track and then it would go big and you would see everything. That's why you go see it in IMAX, because it's like, it's those moments where you're like, what is he talking about? Like there was a scene where he was trying to get them into like the podium and he wasn't listening. And he was like, don't go yet. And he was like, nah, F that. And he went and he crashed and he ended up in the hospital. But in IMAX, you could see the full picture of like what he was talking about. And then when he goes into the simulator later on and he's like, okay, I see it now. He was actually right. It like those moments within the cinematography of Apple doing it specifically for IMAX is where you kind of like, you go, okay, I need to see it in IMAX. But it was beautifully like filmed. I enjoyed it. I did the same thing with Sinners, because Sinners was filmed for IMAX. And until you see it in IMAX and then you see it in like a regular movie theater, you don't understand like how it was like cropped incorrectly, and then, or not incorrectly, I should say, how it was cropped to fit into the normal screens. And that was the coolest part for me. It was just going from IMAX to the regular screen and going, oh, I see now what I miss not going to see it in IMAX. So I completely enjoyed it.
You know, I'm glad you brought up Sinners, because I was going to bring up the fact of how it was framed. And Ryan Coogler mentioned that, you know, you had the different ratios, right? The widescreen ratio and then the tall screen ratio. Yeah. And there was points where you see the screen kind of elevate into the tall ratio. And he mentioned that was a point where he said, hey, there is a scene that you need to pay attention to. And the cue is this screen widening so that you can get all aspects of what is about to happen. That was this movie as well. That was F1, where you kind of saw, especially in those race scenes, there was a point where, you know, it kind of focuses on the subplot and then it widens out. So on the very last scene, when Sonny Hayes, or I guess Lewis Hamilton, crashes into Joshua Pierce, at least Sonny Hayes is the leader of the race for a lap. I think the one thing that this movie did that's profound is that it blended the cinematography with the soundtrack. But in that particular moment, the cinematography took center stage and Hans Zimmer went away. It was just silent. The entire movie, you could hear everybody breathing fast, because everyone was like, okay, I see what this is being set up to do, but is he going to crash?
That's
right.
Yeah.
And you have that moment.
Like that, was that when he was like, he was talking to her on the balcony before that race, and he was like, I just want to like lose myself and I just want to float. And that's when, like, is that scene? Yeah. Like with it's like everything's like bright lights all around him. And I was like, he's going to fuck this up and crash. Right. That's going to be that moment. And I was like, oh my God.
But the cinematography, when it widened up for the crash and then kind of narrowed back in when he's going through that weightless moment in his body. Yeah. That added to the suspense of that, of what should be like kind of a fun scene, right? Like he's about to win his race, the last race, he's about to win it. But that moment, you just kind of, everyone was kind of like, okay, he's got the lead. And as we all watched this year with like Ferrari or something like that, yo, don't blow this, right? Don't blow this lead. And you almost were treating it like it was a real race because we all were seeing it for the first time. So I really enjoyed the fact that they, you know, took the cinematography and used it to increase the intensity, coupled with the soundtrack. It allowed for you to kind of hone in on what was important from that scene, also to take in all the detail. I think you also mentioned, Ebony, the crash scene where Joshua Pierce doesn't do the instructions that Sonny Hayes wants him to do to win the race, and instead he, crashes in epic fashion. It catches fire. I'm sure we all had PTSD when that happened, because we've all seen real life races in the not so recent, not so distant past that have that we still think about, and why some of these safety regulations are all in place. But I think that, again, it leads to the plot, but also you could see the cinematography was focused on, yes, the car is on fire. No, we do not know what's going to happen with this character. This could be a whole thing where this character is gone, because every F1 fan knows, in the blink of an eye, that that can change. So I really appreciate the cinematography lending itself to increasing the intensity, increasing the the dramatics, the suspense, and again, coupled with Hans Zimmer could create a soundtrack on the Yellow Pages, and it would make it suspenseful.
It'd be epic.
Yeah, it'd be epic. I'd read every page. But I think the coup de grace with this movie, the greatest part was when they basically told Hans Zimmer, "Shut up for a second. Let this ride out. Let this weightlessness kind of consume the theater." I think that really lended itself to making this movie what it was, which is again, an entertaining, very, very, very good movie. I want to shift to the plot, because I think the plot is something that we all either like, dislike, maybe fall in the middle. Ebony, let's start with you. Give me your best part of the plot that you liked, and maybe a portion that you didn't like.
I mean, I guess the best part of the plot was they did pay homage to a lot of different things that's happened in F1. Mm-hmm. So the crash we talked about, and then Crashgate, where he kept crashing so that Joshua could get into the front. He crashed 3 cars, so that
3 times in a single race.
And everyone was like, "What's happening right now?"
How is this car still functioning at the end of that race?
So that those moments.
How did he not get black flagged? That's my thing.
Well, they were close. They mentioned it. It's those little things where it's okay, you actually did your research into the history of F1, then you bought some of those instances into a race, into the theme and to the plot. I mean, the plot was just go fast and win a race, and then maybe have random sex in a hotel room after tricking some people into playing poker all night. Sure. It was a wild plot line, but I that was probably my favorite part. Is you had the little, it was very small subplot of this love interest that he was always going to get, because it's a Jerry Bruckheimer film. When have you ever seen Shia LaBeouf and Megan Fox get together, except for outside of Transformers? So perfect. It was a really cool film if you were a casual F1 fan. The plot was there, the wind tunnels and the aerodynamics, and how can we get an extra 2 seconds or 0.2 seconds, and changing the angle of the wing to get that extra second, lowering the floor, or it was just for the casual fan, it was oh, that's really kind of cool to see into it. But for the geeked F1 fan, you're just yes, I love that. It was so cool. It was so awesome to see what a wind tunnel looks like, and how all these numbers play together, and what these team meetings could potentially look like. So that was probably my favorite part of the film. But my least favorite part was just there was the subplot at some points made you forget about the racing and scenes, just because I think she overplayed how she wasn't into him, but was into him in some parts, especially when he was asking her about aerodynamics and wind tunnel use and stuff like that. And I was there's too much weird chemistry already for this to be the third minute of the film. So that was kind of the only part I didn't like.
When they go out to lunch at the beginning, I guess maybe 20 minutes of the movie, and it's they had introduced each other, and it was very clear okay, those two are paired up. Got it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Moving on.
we didn't need that. She's the first woman to like be on an F1 team. Like, she's trying to make history, and we're just like, okay, so now she's his love interest, but she's trying to do a job. I'm like, can you get to the part where she's like actually doing the job before you start like locking eyes longingly into the distance? Like, I just like.
Not a HR director or chief people officer in sight for that, but that some holes and what American audience would think about. Deepti, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little bit more critical, I think. I just thought the writing was poor overall. And one, because it felt like it was one of those movies where the writing is just like lazy, where they kind of over-explain everything in the movie so that they're like, make sure the audience doesn't miss something. So they're going to like repeat stuff several times or like over-explain what is about to happen before it actually happens, so that you don't miss it. So I feel like that kind of takes out from some of like the suspense and just like the movie itself. I am going to go off of what Ebony said about like the main female lead, who is supposed to be this like really like smart, intelligent, powerful woman in F1. She's like the first, what was her title? Like technical lead or technical engineer. I forget exactly what they titled her. But either way, she was like one of the main engineers for the car and was like doing all the aerodynamics for it. And like, that's super cool because we don't see many women in F1, especially in like the STEM forward roles. And then, like you said, to kind of put that on her as a love interest, I would have just rather like, Brad Pitt already had like a wife or a girlfriend and like a love interest who was kind of just not in the picture. And just like, every movie doesn't need a love story plot line. Like, this is a racing movie. We could just keep it at that. And then like going off of that, the movie didn't pass the Bechdel test. I think there were 3, maybe 4 like female characters with any lines in this movie. So there's obviously like Kate, who's the engineer. Then there was the pit crew gal, and then JP's mom, and then the one girl in the club who goes up to him and is like, "Can you introduce me to Carlos Sainz?"
Right.
I literally think those are the only 4 women with like lines in the movie. So Bechdel test wasn't passed. Am I saying like in a way that maybe is more realistic for like the Formula One industry, just because there aren't that many women, but I think it also would have been cool to see a bit more of that, and kind of show like how progressive it could be. But I mean, I don't want to like keep dashing it because it was a really entertaining movie. I would recommend to go see it. I'm just actually also I saw it with my dad and my sisters, who none of who like follow Formula One as closely as we do. And so they just went into it looking for an entertaining movie. And they also agreed. They're like, oh, cinematography is great. Soundtrack is great. But like plot, don't go for the plot. They were kind of, I think I knew going into it that it was lazy writing, and people are just like, no, you're not there for like the writing and the storyline. You're there for what we have just mentioned, like all the visuals. They didn't realize that. So they thought it might be some like profound thing. Which it wasn't. It's just something to entertain you for 2.5 hours. So it fit the bill of that, and I think they did well with that. But yeah, I would say that was like my least favorite part, is just like overall the writing and like just seemed lazy.
So I'll push back just slightly on the take that the writing was lazy, only for the reason that I think my favorite part about the plot and the writing is what you mentioned kind of at the top of the show, that they did not try to put Brad Pitt into a 35-year-old driver's body. They put him into a 58-year-old driver's body because that's what he is. I think being able to take that as a guy who was in F1, who had a spinal injury that forced him to retire, and then he kind of hid it from his friend and then teammate, when he comes back to try and lure him back to F1 because he's been, basically driving around being, the most interesting man in the world for racing and doing all these races worldwide. I thought that was an interesting take. I think the fact that you said that maybe he should have had a wife or a girlfriend would have been better than his love interest being someone on the team that he is joining, only because I think that it would have humanized him a bit more, and it would have maybe caused you to think about why he takes some of the risks that he does, and for him to kind of think about, hey, when I turn this corner, and we talk about this in regular race, right? The guys who are dads who all of a sudden are like, yeah, they're not taking that corner the way someone who isn't Max. But now that Max is a dad, right? Like, we talk about whether that will affect how he drives and maybe how he, drives with reckless abandon, and maybe that's toned down or tempered a bit. That would be something that maybe you think about with Sonny Hayes, because again, he is up there, and this is a sport where, details do matter. And maybe that would be something that can help, humanize him in a way, as opposed to him just being this, oh, we just got him because he's gung-ho and he's just going to run into everybody on the track until we win a race, which is exactly kind of what happened. I will say the worst part of the plot for me was the dude trying to swindle the entire team out from under Ruben, out from under his grasp. The guy who just came in and was like, yeah, I'm going to try and, get him fired, get Sonny Hayes as my team principal. All he has to do is throw this race, and Sonny ends up winning it, so he can't sell the team. I thought that was a weird thing. And sure, I'm sure that some of that happens, but I'm sure F1 fans are like, yeah, no one's selling a team based on one race. Like, right. Alpine still exists, and they've been trying to sell for a year, right?
Hey, now.
Hey. And they still are, apparently, right? Like, but again, I feel like that was a weird thing. And again, they need to add some sort of antagonist to this movie, and it would be easy to throw in kind of the rivalry between two drivers. But maybe this was a little bit far-fetched, because again, I think the F1 fans would be like, yeah, I don't think he would be doing this without anybody knowing. This is 2025. We learn about stuff before it even happens on social media. So, and this world where silly season is year round, it seems like, I feel like a takeover, a board control takeover of a team would be something that gets out. It would not be restricted to that person trying to take over, and Sonny Hayes of all people. So I thought that was the one that I felt could have been left out. If they wanted to create some board drama, like, hey, Ruben, you need to get this team to 6th place or you're going to be fired. That's one thing. But to say, oh, we're going to sell the team to this other guy who happens to be on the board, and he's going to fire you and put your driver in as a team principal. I thought that was kind of a messy addition to the plot line. And as some of you mentioned, it kind of takes away from what we were there for. We were there for the racing. We were there for the, is this team going to win a race? Is, JP going to be on top? Is Sonny Hayes going to get on top? Like, those sort of questions were better to be answered than who's going to own the team after this movie is over. So I thought that was kind of lacking in that regard.
Can I say, in terms of like how they also marketed the movie, and maybe it was just I wasn't actively looking for stuff, but I think they did pretty well with keeping the plot under wraps and not spoiling it with any of the promos that they were doing, because also going into it, I thought it'd be, Sonny Hayes, great driver, he's going to come and they're going to be at like a top team and be going for the championship, not literally bottom of the table trying to win one race. Like, if that's literally the whole plot, that they're trying to win a race. And so I think that's so interesting, for a sport that heavily focuses on the top of the table teams and the drivers championship or whatever. It was, I guess, cool in a way to see what it's like at the bottom of the table, and what we also talk about a lot on our show is like the mid-table race, and the bottom table is actually really important as well. So I think that was good to highlight. And then I want to reiterate what Ebony said about, for us as F1 fans, like all the little homages they paid to past things. So like Romain Grosjean's crash where, he went up in a fireball but burned only his hands. That's literally exactly what happened. I wonder if they had to like ask him permission to like use that kind of as a likeness. Like I'm sure they had to. And then other things, there was like I think one of them Sonny brought the like fire extinguisher, took it from like the stewards, and that was something that like Senna did back in the day in one of the races. So little things there. Obviously the like Abu Dhabi thing, and like I'm surprised Lewis, being one of the producers, like made himself the one to crash out, but also not surprised because like it's Lewis. Like he wouldn't make himself win everything. So yeah, just like those little things that if you are not an F1 fan or not up with the history of it, you wouldn't have caught on to those. But so it is like extra nice to have that background information and go into watching it like that.
Brad Pitt mentioned that the spinal injury that Sonny Hayes has in the movie that he hides from the team when he comes back, and what Ruben discovers when he crashes and gets into the hospital is based on Martin Donnelly's crash in the 1990 Spanish Grand Prix. That, I mean, he basically was nearly paralyzed in that crash and had to retire from F1. He actually thanks him in the credits for sharing that story and allowing it to be presented in a different way, of course, but kind of using that injury to kind of be the background of Sonny Hayes. So I thought, like you said, it's important that they point out some of these details that even F1 fans probably didn't recall at first glance, but that just shows you the attention to detail that they were trying to get in this movie. Can they put all of that detail in 2.5 hours of movie? No, but at least they can use what they can to form the the subplot and form the background of these characters. Let's quickly take a break, because on the other side I want to talk about two things: cameos, and I want us all to be movie judges and give people a grade on what this movie F1 is about. So stick around, we'll be right back. All right, we're back, and I want to turn to the cameos because I think this is the fun part. I think someone counted that there were 74 different cameos in this movie. I'm not going to list all of them.
God,
that would take too long.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
and someone has a TikTok where they kind of number them 1 through 74. Some of them are racers. Obviously, we've talked about Lewis Hamilton. I talked a little bit about Gunther. Gunther, I thought, was the funniest one.
He's the funniest.
Yeah.
But there's also, the amount of F1 specific cameos was amazing from almost all of the current drivers.
Yeah.
And a lot of the team principals, a lot of the team owners. Martin Brundle and David Croft obviously provide commentary. You have 24 hours of Daytona guys. Yeah.
It was a fun one though. They were good though. I loved it. Shout out to Lewis, because he's the one that got Brundle and Crofty on, because he was like, you can't have F1 movie without having the voices.
The voices,
of F1.
yeah.
So shout out to him for that.
Yeah, I think it was great to have those. And again, some of them were, they kind of walk by. I think it was that Sonny Hayes was giving an interview, and like Fernando Alonso kind of taps him in the back and is like, hey, good race. And it's something we see from these drivers quite a bit. And they're just like, it's a very quick one, but you kind of see like, they're like probably like, hey, Fernando, so here's what you're going to do. You're just going to go behind him and tap him on the shoulder and just kind of whisper good race and keep it moving. And it turned into some like 5-second, like, jovial back and forth banter that, that would be something that you see during these post-match or post-race interviews. But Ebony, tell me some of the cameos that you liked and enjoyed.
The racers, because that's just not their thing. And they were hilarious in the sense of like, they just kind of were like, so just do what I always do and then just walk around. Like, that was probably the really cool part, is just seeing them still be in their element of like, it's a race day, I still need to do what I need to do, but they were also like, oh, but I'm also in the movie zone for like 2 seconds. And you could tell the ones that have been like, they're used to being in front of the camera way too much, like Max, Oscar, even Zach Brown was like a natural. It was all just kind of it felt like a normal race day because of just how they interacted with each other, even with the camera, like even with more cameras rolling, because it just felt like a normal race day. So that was my favorite.
Can I talk about the one part that I had to question myself? Was towards the end, Sonny crashes for like the third time intentionally in the Abu Dhabi race to force the red flag, and everybody's in pit lane and they all can get tires and everything. And they kind of, and I think he says something like, hey, I'm going to hold off Lewis and JP, you go for it. And JP kind of looks at Lewis Hamilton, and Lewis Hamilton has this stone cold killer face. And I'm like, I don't understand this part. Am I supposed to have to hate Lewis Hamilton for the next 5 minutes? Because I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. And there's a point where Lewis Hamilton becomes the race antagonist for 5 minutes, and you have to kind of see how these two JP and Sonny Hayes kind of race against him. And again, we've seen that before. We've seen teams try and fail that. But the answer was to crash into him, which I also didn't like. But again, I think Lewis Hamilton, that is, acting is about taking your natural persona and being able to do the complete opposite. There is no antagonistic bone in that man's body, but he was able to pull that off for 5 minutes. He has a future in acting, ladies and gentlemen. I think once his racing days are done, I think more producing of films and maybe more featuring in films are going to be part of his deal. Deepti.
Yeah, I think my favorite, you already mentioned it once, were the principals, and like Gunther for one, and then Fred Vassar. I think Fred is one of the funniest principals out there, and he's just so real or whatever. And he was just himself. You could tell, like that one scene with, it was just him and Zach Brown being interviewed, and he's on the couch. And I don't remember exactly his line. Like he had 2 or 3 words, but it was hilarious, those 2 words. I'm like, those two, once they're done with their F1, I mean, Gunther's already kind of done. I feel like he's getting into Hollywood more now already, and he has like his podcast. He's going on like tours around the world, giving talks and all. He needs to just keep it going with Hollywood. Both of them, they're great.
So I now want to shift to the final thing that I want to talk about, which is judging this movie. So I didn't tell you this beforehand, but each of you, we have a 1 to 10, 1 being this is a terrible, stupid movie. Don't ever see this ever again. Why does this exist? To 10, must see again. We'll see 50 times if necessary. It's one of the best movies of my life.
Oh.
Ebony, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you place this movie?
Well, it's for sure not a 10. I would definitely go see it again if like.
I mean, you've seen it twice already, so.
Yeah.
Well, I did want to see both because I did the same thing with Sinners, and I was like, okay, I can see the difference. Like, if I wanted to just go watch it again, just because it's like there, I could see this being a solid 7.5.
7.5. That's not bad.
Yeah. I was gonna give it, a cool like 7. I think it's not one of those where I'm like dying to go see it again, or like I would make everyone I know go see it. But it is one like if someone wanted to watch it, if it was on, I'd pay attention. I'd watch it. It's like good. It might be one of those where it's like, oh yeah, you can have it on the background while you're having like people over, and you don't have to super pay attention to it. But it's just entertainment. But I think a solid 7.
Yeah. So I was gonna go 8 because, as I mentioned at the top, my first question is, did this entertain me? It absolutely did. Did it have everything that I was looking for in a Formula One movie where I've seen kind of the build up to this? Yes, it did. It had everything. It had the racing. It had the cameos. It had even a decent plot that mimicked what an F1 team would be going after. And I think once it hits TV, I'm sure Apple's obviously gonna have it on Apple TV Plus. I think it's gonna become one of those really good rewatchable movies, especially in the off season when there's no Formula One to really watch. It would be great if it was on right now when we're in this break. But it's one of those where I think it's going to be very, very watchable. I also think it's back in movies and in IMAX.
It went back to IMAX, yeah.
Yeah, so if you're listening to this, you have not seen it, Andre, you should see it. I think this is a high quality movie. It's worth your time. It's entertaining. It's intense. It's suspenseful. It has jokes. It has love interests. It has it all. It's what a movie is supposed to be. And of course, Hans Zimmer again will have you captivated for 2.5 hours by just saying nothing and playing everything that this movie is about.
At the very least, it is worth a watch. We're not saying watch multiple times, but it is worth a watch. It is worth those 3 hours of your time.
Yeah.
Before we go, Donald, you went to the premiere, the fan thing premiere, just 2 minutes. Just talk to us about what that was like. Yeah,
so it was like a pre-screener that F1 was doing in certain IMAXs around the country. Gratefully, the one down the street was the one that was the DC one, so I was able to see that. My buddies Josh and Alex went. Our buddy Doug went with us as well. And I think it was cool because I think that was more F1 diehards watching that. Everyone was showing up in their their F1 gear. I had my DRSFC shirt. Shout out to Ebony for getting it to me in time. So that I could wear it to the premiere. But it was a cool experience because we all were in the same mindset of being F1 diehards. It wasn't casual fans. It wasn't oh, honey, this looks cool. It has Brad Pitt. It wasn't that sort of crowd. It was all people who were interested in the sport, and obviously knew about the movie and are interested in seeing how F1 projected to the very, very big screen of IMAX. So I thought that experience was cool. I would like to see it again, maybe in the theaters. Maybe I'll go back to an IMAX and see it because I want to see what it would be like with more casuals. Although maybe at this point there may not be a lot of casuals left that haven't seen it yet. If they don't want to, if they want to see it, they probably have already gone to see it. And it may be more people like me who have seen it, before. And who are diehards of the sport to kind of do that. But I thought it was a cool deal. I'm glad I got to see it before most people did. I also, real quick, I want to talk about the F1 premiere, the actual premiere that was in New York, because it was during an off week and obviously all the F1 guys were there. And you could tell who was very comfortable about going to see a movie with other bigwig people and who was I'm just trying to be at home with my dog or my cat. There was a couple of guys who were you got me dressed up for this thing. I ain't being paid for this. Why am I here? I'm in New York. I don't I'm trying to be at home. There's a race next week. What are we doing here? And then you had guys who were yo, I'm about to watch 2.5 hours of F1 racing. I don't have to be involved in it. This is great. But I'm going to see my face at some point and they're cracking some jokes. Awesome. So yeah, I thought that was cool. I thought the build up for this movie was great and it was worth that build up. It didn't promise, something that didn't deliver. And I think it's a great movie. So I think it's a good movie you guys should go see. I believe Ebony and Deepti agree in that. If you haven't seen it, go see it. But that will do it for this episode of DRSFC. We will be back. We have a lot more stuff we want to do. The summer break is almost over. We'll be getting back to our previews, but we have a couple more things we're going to bring to you in the meantime. So until then, for Deepti and for Ebony, I'm Donald. Vroom vroom.
Vroom vroom.